Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Star Wars Alliance, your home on the Geek Ultimate Alliance podcast network for any and all things Star Wars. I'm one of your hosts, as always, Katie, and joining me is the illustrious Clay. Clay, how are you doing today?
I am doing pretty well. Like I had said before we started recording, I'm a little tired. For those of you who didn't know that today was not only Mandalorian Day, but for us over at Ranger Alliance, it is the anniversary special over on Netflix. And so I was up all night. I thought I was probably going to have a day of not sleeping whatsoever, but I was able to catch about 5 hours of sleep afterward. So it's been a long day. And of course, I am preparing for my other podcast tomorrow. So very tired and very busy day, but otherwise pretty good. How about yourself?
I can understand that, been up since 3, dealing with a migraine because I left my pillow at my mother-in-law's house. Um, so my neck does not like sleeping on anything else other than my one pillow, apparently. And the funny thing is you can't find that pillow anymore. So it's not like I can ever find a new pillow ever again. Um, so yeah, but we're here to talk about the Mandalorian season finale today. We're also going to pick a winner for the giveaway that we've been doing for the Chronicles of the Jedi. So very excited about that. Um, and yeah, we're gonna get into some stuff, and I'm sure today's episode's not gonna be very pretty. Will it be prettier than last week's Mandalorian review? That is the question. That is the question. What do you think, Clay? Because Clay's with
Uh,
me,
I
obviously.
I I I think that this episode, as we have seen online, is very divided. It's either I love it, I love it, I love it, or what's wrong with this trash. There is no in between, I feel like. Um, I will personally say that I think I fall in between those two. Um, I know that there was a lot of expectations, and we will go into those expectations because, again, we did talk about those last episode. Katie was very passionate about whether somebody would or would not show up. Here's a little bit of a spoiler: they did not. So Katie seems to be
I win 2
very
weeks in a
happy.
row.
So we will definitely get into all of that.
All right, yes, but before we get into that, we do have to hit the podcast paperwork side of things. Like I say, Star Wars Alliance, not Slice from Star Wars Alliance, is a part of the Geek Ultimate Alliance podcast network. We have 8 shows, 7 days a week, and you can check all of those out in the description box below for your reading pleasure. There are 3 ways to support us as a podcast and a network as a whole. The first way is via Patreon, where we have 2 tiers. The $5 tier gets y'all access to our early episodes, ad-free episodes. Um, oh my gosh, I forgot like the third one because there's always 3 things. Anyways, um, it also gets you access. Sorry, it's just been one of those days, y'all. It also gets you access to our live Patreon call-in show, which is this Friday, for those who are curious. So if you want to join in the discussion about the season finale of Mandalorian, um, let's talk about Shazam or whatever you want to talk about. Predictions for Guardians of the Galaxy 3. Come join in the fun. It's not this Friday, excuse me, it is this Saturday at 9 p.m. Eastern
Yes.
Standard. So you still have time to join the Alliance and come talk with us on the Geek First YouTube channel. But if not, that episode will be on feeds at some point next week, or you can check it out on the YouTube channel. There is also a $1 tier on our Patreon, where that just helps keep the Kyber crystals treasured around here. Because we appreciate any support y'all can give us. The second way to support us is via the ads. We're an ad-supported show, ad-supported network. Um, Clay or I will give you a warning before those ads are to occur, but just so you know now, we don't get to choose who the ads are from, nor how many times you hear the same ad in the same episode, nor how loud those ads are. So that warns just help you prepare those volume levels. The third and final way to support us is via rating and reviewing us on your favorite podcatcher of choice. Those reviews are so important and help put us into the feeds of other listeners who may not be following us on social media. The other fantastic way to contact us other than social media, which is of course Star Wars Alliance about the A in the Wars Very important, don't forget it. You can email us at that same username at gmail.com. Check out the description box below for the full spelling and everything. You can also text, leave us a voice message or a voicemail at 830-538-4828. We want to hear from you guys on Mandalorian season finale reactions, of course. So, yeah, with that, Clay, where do you want to go for the news?
Um, let's go ahead and jump right into what we had said we were going to go into today, last week, with the Kathleen Kennedy stuff, because I think there was a lot of things people were basically just like kind of rolling their eyes at with her. But most importantly, there's some things in, I believe it was a Variety article or Hollywood Reporter. I can't remember which one. Um,
Um,
that I think people should
Entertainment
give.
Weekly.
Entertainment Weekly. Man, I was way off. That I
Oh my gosh,
believe
was that the right one? Yes.
people should be giving Kathleen a little bit benefit of the doubt, basically. Um, I think one of the biggest things for her was the expectations of how to entertain people during COVID, during the whole shutdown thing. I remember reading through that article and even watching the interview during Star Wars Celebration, and her talking about how uh, no one really knew how or what their next steps were going to be with Hollywood shutting down, with the world shutting down, how they were going to be doing their jobs, and how they, of course, would be entertaining their fans. And that did, of course, hiccup a lot of people, not just Star Wars, Marvel, DC, everybody. But the idea of how she wants to event, what did she say? What was her quote? Was eventicize movies again, or the theater experience. Um, I think it goes on to our conversation that we had last week about how I said there was a lot of people that were like, we'll see what happens. Probably none of these movies are coming out, blah, blah, blah. And we gave our 2 cents on why we do think these movies are going to happen. And I think that it's safe to say that these movies will, in fact, be coming out. And hopefully, through the experience that they've had with the because I feel like Mandalorian has been getting all the love as far as marketing. Um,
Yep.
Although not the greatest, but the best out of everything that they have released since their pandemic shutdown and all of that. That
Yep.
I think through that experience of the marketing there can help them moving forward with the movies that are releasing in the future.
Yeah. I think 100%. And also, I lied. This interview is from IGN because it was during Celebration. The other thing that we have to talk about, which Kathleen Kennedy talked about, potentially more High Republic shows and more of the characters coming into live action. That one was done by Entertainment Weekly. I had the wrong
Ah,
article up.
okay.
She one of the things I wanted to focus on was the development access. Rogue Squadron, um, like she talked about Rogue Squadron and how it's more of like a scheduling issue than like development's been like it's shelved is
Yeah.
like what most people assumed when Patty Jenkins said, um, oh yeah, I'm not working on Rogue Squadron at the moment, but they want me to come back. So they all assumed, oh yeah, it's shelved, because Lucasfilm never picks up what they um put away kind of thing. And she was like, no, it's just scheduling. Um and like she called like I think this was in reference to Patty as well as Ryan Johnson and then Kevin Feige about how they're really talented, but obviously really talented people are high in demand in Hollywood right now. And if you're making something that's well loved, then people are going to want you to continue making that, and you can't necessarily come back right away to what you intended to do. But I wanted to point out something interesting with the Kevin Feige project that was announced, and the Loki screenwriter said, "Oh yeah, I'm working on a script for that." And Alan Horn confirmed it and everything. Alan Horn
Hmm.
being one of the execs for Disney. Um, she said Kevin Feige's project was something announced in the press, or I suppose fandom, but there was nothing ever developed. We never discussed an idea. As everyone knows, Kevin's a huge Star Wars fan, and if he did come up with something, I would be all ears. But that's never really happened. It's not an abandoned project. It just didn't happen. What do you think about that? Considering Alan Horn said, "Oh yeah, we're super excited to have Kevin Feige work on a Star Wars."
It's a very weird experience that all of us experienced all at once. Um, because we talked about how I was very much in denial of the fact that it wasn't happening, and the fact I felt like people were gaslighting me and like, hey, this happened on this date. I watched it. Something like I knew it was announced, and then Katie was like, nope, I'm gonna prove you wrong here live on the podcast, and you know, I want it to happen because for me, I had said that I enjoy people known for something completely outside of one fandom jumping into a completely new fandom, and I think that's very interesting. It brings out the very creative mind of those individuals. Of course, we know and we've seen and we've experienced what Kevin Feige has done with the MCU. I would just like to see how he approaches Star Wars, And for Kathleen, and for, like you said, all of these other very high up individuals, very in the know of what's happening behind the scenes over at Disney and Marvel and Lucasfilm, basically saying, "Oh yeah, I'm working on that. Oh, I'm doing that." Like, what do those conversations look like now? Right? Like, hey, so you said that you were working on a project that you're not working on. Are you working on a script in hopes that we would choose you? Like, what does that even look like?
Yeah. I don't exactly know because it's like you said, it's an interesting question to ask. Um, so yeah. The other thing that she brought up was confirming what Donald Glover had said in his recent interview with GQ, um, about whether or not the Lando series will be made. And she said, I can just tell you, it's still happening and he's still very excited about it. We kind of talked about this with Donald Glover's reaction to the question.
Yeah, I, I this one I am for sure like do not believe until I am watching it the day of. Like, it's unfortunately the reason why is because it has the and I know this is a reach, but it has the same kind of interaction that people at WB don't want with connections with the DCEU. They know that Glover was attached to a failed, quote unquote, failed project Solo. And yeah, he has charisma. Yeah, he has his own fandom. Yeah, he has fans, all of these different things that are good for Star Wars, but he's attached to something that people want there to be a continuation of, where Lucasfilm has had no interest in continuing. So for me, I just don't expect Lucasfilm to be like, yes, we're going to give you an inch, because then that fandom of Solo and makes Solo 2 happen will go a mile and keep asking and keep asking and keep asking. It's the same thing, unfortunately. Not in the extreme, but the same thing with Zack Snyder's Justice League.
But I can almost kind of see you kind of call this your sequel series to Solo and have Alden Ehrenreich come in. You could have Kira come in, Emilia Clarke and stuff, and kind of because based on Lando's diary, it's like an adventure story. It's an adventure of the week. What did I do at this stage of my life? Kind of thing.
You can't do that now that they've used Mark Hamill as a younger Luke Skywalker in Mandalorian. You can't.
You, I just don't think it really matters because unless unless Harrison Ford goes, yeah, I'll come back. I think it's you're missing out on too much, and they've committed to so much in the Skywalker saga era to go, oh yeah, we're just not gonna use that. And arguably, even though he was attached to a failed project, which Solo didn't fail, it made its money back. Like, but that is
It
technically
did it
failing.
it did not exceed expectations.
Yes.
Yes.
But being a part of this failed project, Donald Glover's Lando was arguably the most praised thing in it.
Yes,
And
I
you would think,
100% agree with that.
let's capitalize on that relationship a little bit, I feel like. So I believe it.
Yes.
Like you said, though, I'll believe it when I see it.
Exactly. Yeah. I had also said last time we talked about this was the fact that he is attached to a Sony project right now with a Spider-Man villain, which is very musical based, which is one of his biggest passions, and so I do think he will prioritize that over jumping back into the Star Wars universe.
Yeah, we'll see. When talking about director Charmin's movie with Daisy Ridley, um, she Kathleen Kennedy talked about Daisy's return and how much she's excited for it, and the highs and lows of Luke Skywalker's life influencing her own journey. And she said, it's huge. We're 15 years off from the rise of Skywalker, so we're kind of post-war, post-First Order, and the Jedi are in disarray. And there's a lot of discussion around who are the Jedi, what are they doing, what's the state of the galaxy, and she's attempting to rebuild the Jedi Order based on the books, based on what she promised Luke. So that's where we're going. I don't know if we'll spend a lot of time in flashbacks or Force ghosts or things like that, but certainly the spirit of what he represents to her is going to be significant. And I think the thing to mention strictly off of this quote is the Jedi being in disarray. What does that mean to you?
The Jedi. Okay, so I saw this being a discussion. I think that the phrasing of the where is it right here? The Jedi are in disarray. I think it's more so she is in disarray. I think Rey is in disarray. I think that she, because again, 15 years is a long time. You know, I could
Yeah.
very much see there being a possibility of her looking for other Force users, training them, encouraging them to be Jedi. But in my eyes, I think that the only quote unquote Jedi that you have are her and quite possibly Finn. I don't think
Yeah.
there's anybody else. Now, of course, we have read recently Shadows of the Sith, where Luke was training a bunch of people at the temple. Now, from what we know, Katie knows a little bit more because she has read a lot more on the, of course, the becoming of
Legends?
no, the Kylo Ren comic.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, Kylo Ren destroying that temple, quite possibly the younglings and Jedi that were training in that
You don't
temple,
really
I would assume.
you don't really kind of see that. You see some of the younglings are on the outskirts and are like returning, and he goes, there's nothing to return to. And then they decide to hunt him down because they think he killed everyone. I only read the first couple issues because I got distracted by other things. Um,
Well, and I say that just because, like, you can assume that maybe there's some with experience as far as like wanting to become Jedi and they never had that full training.
yeah.
So there may be those individuals still out there. So I
Yeah.
don't expect there to be a, of course, nothing like there was in the prequel era, and of course, nothing like there is in the High Republic era. I think it's very minuscule as far as the actual idea of the Jedi at this time, and I think that's the whole idea. Oh, well, you know what? We're forgetting one very important individual. I think Grogu will also be a part of that.
I
So
think, yeah. especially after today's episode, I think that's important to note. Um, so, and the other thing to consider, right, is it took Luke almost 20 years to get to a point where he had a stable Jedi Order and everything. Um, so, and like, even so, when he's working with the new Jedi Order, he's dealing with a war and everything, which he's dealing with like the Imperial remnant through the 20 years he's trying to build the Jedi Order. Um,
Hmm.
but it takes him 8 to 10 years to even start thinking about a Jedi Academy. Like there is nothing else at the top of his mind other than trying to figure that out. And so, like, you go through the Thrawn trilogy, which is Heir to the Empire, Dark Force Rising, The Last Command, and then you hit Jedi Academy trilogy, where he's building and training people that he's found across the galaxy. So,
Yeah, yeah, for sure. But what do you think? So in the quote also, um, it says she's attempting to rebuild the Jedi Order based on the books. So the books, of course, that are in question are the sacred texts, because we did see that Rey did in fact keep those. She is very much basically, if you guys are reading the main title Star Wars in comics currently, Luke Skywalker is obsessed with the Jedi text, and it's
yep.
almost like he does not want to do anything else but read about becoming a Jedi Knight. Like that's a number one important thing for him right now in the comics. And so, do you think Rey will learn from the mistakes of the Jedi before her? Or do you think that she will make dramatic changes to how the Jedi Order functions? Or will it not even be addressed in this next film?
I think you're gonna have to address it because that was a failing of Luke's order was that he was trying to make it too much like the old Jedi.
Yeah. Uh, I
So you have to take that into consideration. And that's something that I hope they take and kind of adapt from Legends. They don't have to go full force into it, but when Luke is looking for people to come to his Jedi Order, in Legends, he's specifically like, I don't care if you're married, like the Jedi of old did, but I gotta take what I can get. Because all of the force sensitive people in the galaxy who were kids were like either wiped out or taken by Palpatine and manipulated. Um, so he takes what he can get, and he knows, okay, I can't ask these people to step away from their relationships, but I can teach them how to control that attachment and work through it and be heroes of the galaxy.
yeah. I think that it would be 100% a misstep if they decided to basically do the exact same thing that they were doing with Luke Skywalker, just to give Rey that kind of like obstacle, because then it
Yeah.
shows no character development, especially if it's 15 years in the future. I think that you need, because the whole idea, I think we have talked about this plenty of times. The whole idea of not being able to have any type of relationship, um, as a Jedi, is very silly. Um, I think that the idea, if you are a Jedi that is in fully control of your emotions and everything else that you are trained to be, that having emotion is okay.
Mhm.
So I definitely want to see that progression in this new movie. But I know that was a topic of discussion as well when this interview had taken place, for sure.
Yeah.
Where do you want to go
Um,
to next?
I think her quotes about Dave and James Mangold are fairly basic. There's really nothing new in those quotes that we really didn't get from the panel. So let's move on to her other interview with Entertainment Weekly. um, where Kennedy discusses the possibility of more High Republic era shows and introducing more fan favorite characters to live action Star Wars.
This one, I don't know if I have this one.
Oh, I sent it to you. It's in the messages. The first thing that Entertainment
Okay.
Weekly asked was if there are any plans for more High Republic era shows, given that The Acolyte will be the first live action project set in that time period. And Kennedy seems to think yes. All signs point to yes. And she said it could be because one of the things we talked about in publishing was how could we begin to incubate certain ideas. And in the case of the High Republic, there's been some wonderful storytelling that's gone on there. It's not necessarily what Leslie is doing with the Acolyte, but it certainly opens up the possibilities for being able to tell stories in that space.
I I I mean, I have said this plenty of times. Give me more High Republic. Um, I think that uh the character development that we've seen in just the 3 years, 2.5 years that we've been reading High Republic has been absolutely amazing. Even though we have only touched upon actual like I mean the first wave of hero, the first phase, should I say, of heroes was for a year. This one for a year. Um, I think that I have really enjoyed these books. Um, Again, we talked about the idea of overlapping stories and how that can be kind of complicated. Um, but this is the bed that you made, Lucasfilm. You've decided to keep books and TV and movies all canon, so it's your mess to deal with, unfortunately, and
Hmm.
you've set really high expectations for us fans. Um, but we want more of it. We want these characters to definitely show up in live action or animation. We talked about it briefly in our Star Wars Alliance chat with Travis, how we would love the High Republic to give a Clone Wars treatment to that era because there's so much unexplored space there that I would really love to see.
Yeah. And it could be really cool to have that lullaby involved. Shrikarai, Shrikarai.
Oh, I could only imagine like the like either like in credits or something of
Hmm.
that little lullaby playing. Ugh, give me chills.
The next thing she talked about was actually video game characters coming to live action, particularly one Cal Kestis, who we've all talked about as a like, oh, he could appear in Obi-Wan. Oh, he could have been the Jedi that Grogu called out to, and all this stuff. So, and we've talked about how cool it would be, and Cameron, okay, I
Monahan.
can't remember last Monahan. Monahan has talked about how he would be down to portray the character. Kennedy said it could be really interesting, but it's just not something that's front and center right at the moment. What do you think about that?
It's a disappointment. And well, let me backtrack real quick because this is dead center of the Skywalker saga, right? Something that we definitely have been clamoring about moving away from for sure. Um, but I think that Cal being such a character that was or is disassociated with our main heroes, Obi-Wan Kenobi, Anakin Skywalker, uh, the people on the Rebels crew, like he is completely separated from those and has a completely new perspective on how he walks through the galaxy that I would really love to see that. One of our I guess it really wasn't really a topic in our books, but one in our book discussion, Jedi Battle Scars. But one thing that I very much noticed was how he adopted this crew as a family, and he vocalized it like, "I love you guys. This is my family. Like, I wouldn't let anything happen to you guys." Again, a way that Anakin Skywalker, of course, wanted the Jedi Order to be like he considered, Obi-Wan and Anakin had this like unspoken like relationship as brothers, right? We all know that. But again, that aspect of, oh, you have to treat people in this certain way as a Jedi. Like Cal Kestis knew, okay, there's no Jedi Order, we're surviving, and we need each other to survive. Like he knew exactly what to do and how, of course, to make lives better throughout the galaxy. And so he used that philosophy with this crew on the Mantis. And I just think that crew overall, very wild cast of characters that I think would be
Mhm.
a very fun experience. Like imagine seeing, and we're going to technically in Ahsoka, but like the Rebels crew, like when we see them in live action, it's gonna be so much fun. And I really hope that the cast is able to capture some of the same energy as the cast did in the animated show. I know it won't be exactly the same. I
Yeah.
know that. But to get as
Oh,
close as you
100%.
can, I would really hope. And with the video game, the very, very interesting thing with the video game is that you have two very prominent actors in the video game that have had very prominent roles in live action. Of course, Cameron Monaghan being on Gotham, being on, I believe the show was Shameless. And then, oh shoot, his new master in of course, Battle Scars, and of course,
Yeah. I can't think
Jedi
of her name.
Survivor. I can't remember her name, but she has been prominent in TV and movies as well. So, like, they have the experience to be in live action. Just give it to them. Like, I would love to see that.
Yeah. I think it's really a waste, but I can also understand wanting to keep things separate so that you can have the ability to tell different stories. Um, and like it's very similar to like what we've seen with like the High Republic storytelling, where like okay, they're trying to stick the same characters within like the adult books, the same characters within the middle grade books, and like keeping that one separate storytelling going so that you don't necessarily have to tune into something else.
That is true. But what I think they should consider, and again, we did say, and it was revealed to us that something like the Bad Batch is going to have its final season, uh, sometime possibly next year or 2025. I don't think it was necessarily announced specifically. Um, but if you showed me Cal Kestis in the Bad Batch for one episode, like give me that at the very least. Like I think that Cameron Monaghan jumping in for a few voice lines would be a-okay. Like because again, you have this monster of continuity built upon the idea that anything and everything is fair game. Any and all characters are fair game. So play along with it. Even if it means like, you know, I think you were the one that theorized the different titles that Star Wars plays around with is very much the identity of where they stay. So with Cal Kestis, his title is Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. The book
Yep.
was Star Wars Jedi Battle Scars. The next game is Jedi Survivor. If they were to create a comic book, Star Wars Jedi whatever, and have some of the more adventures of Cal Kestis in there, give us that then. Like, I think that content with that character, again, inside of a monstrous continuity like Star Wars, like with every other character, we're able to say, oh, I get them in this, and I get them in this, and I get them in this. Whereas Cal Kestis, I have to wait every 4 to 5 years to finally say, oh, I get him in this and I get him in this. You know that
Yeah,
it's a little
it
bit of a
does
bummer.
look. I was looking up the master, who is Sarah Junda. Uh, and the video game developer, Respawn, actually said that the plan is for Jedi Survivor to be a trilogy. So the next one is supposed to target the Unreal Engine 5. Um, so
Yeah,
for those who are curious, I didn't know that. So
I I am curious. Of course, we touched up on it very little, but they are bringing in some High Republic details within Jedi Survivor. Which, by the way, as the time we are recording this, we have 7, 8, 9 days until that game is released.
Mhm.
And I'm gonna go ahead and throw this out there because Katie is an individual that doesn't speed through games or anything, and we've talked about Brent possibly coming on to help review the game. Um, I'm gonna say I'm gonna give myself a month with the game. I think a month is good enough time to play it. Uh, of course, I know Brent himself is a very busy individual outside of podcasting, so I think a month would also give him enough time to experience almost everything in the game. I'm not aiming to beat it within a month, but just getting a good feel of the
Yeah,
game and things like that. And we'll do a progression type of review for it. So I'm gonna go ahead and say it now. Brent, if you're up for that, um, please let me know and we can plan something around that. And listeners, we will definitely at least give you something for Jedi
yeah.
Survivor.
No, and I'll watch the cutscenes when it comes down to that. But no, and I think it's only available on the new consoles now, and I just am not interested in purchasing a PS5 right now when I'm not gonna really use it. It's also not gonna transfer my games over, so I have my beloved PS4 games, so I'm just gonna stick with those. Um, I may get a PS6 when it comes down to it because by then the PS4 will probably be obsolete, and there might be a game I want to play. So,
Very true. Very, very true.
all right, are we ready to talk about how Nielsen indicates that despite The Mandalorian having lower viewers this season, as the season progressed, the viewers got higher. That is the next topic.
So I saw somebody say that the reason why this is because of the viewership and or the, I guess, randomness of the Book of Boba Fett kind of interfering with the momentum of season 2 going into season
Yeah,
3 of Mandalorian. Um and I kind of have to agree. I think that the I hate calling it this, but the Mandoverse is getting a little bit in its own way. Um, and we'll talk a little bit about the ideas of the Mandoverse because I did share something in our Star Wars Alliance chat that I think I very much agree with, but I think would also fall into the same problem as the one that I'm explaining now with the Book of Boba Fett. So we all know because we all talked about it. Um, the very emotional, very, very talked about end of season 2 of Mandalorian was very highly praised. And then to jump into the Book of Boba Fett, I think people had a lot of expectations in quality, storytelling, and the connections of Mandalorian, where people were like, eh, you know? But again, we've talked about the fact that marketing has not been amazing either. Um, so the idea of them not pushing enough for how's or when season 3 was starting, I think could have been a problem also.
yeah. It, it's definitely tough when most people are used to, oh, okay, seasons are gonna come back at the same time every single year. And that's what cable TV has taught us for a while. Um, so when you have such a big gap in between, especially when people were not expecting the Mandalorian and Grogu to come into play in Book of Boba Fett and then to come into this, like it can be very confusing. And I think honestly we're probably gonna see the same thing with season 4 with the upcoming Writers Guild of America strike. They haven't started production on season 4 of Mandalorian yet. You we could be waiting another 2 to 3 years to get
Ye-
a show out of
ye-
here because we've heard nothing's going into production. I, Acolyte is in production right now and Andor is in production right now, but they've been in production since last year.
Yeah, and
So,
it's very interesting that you bring up the writer strike because I feel like any and all podcasts that have to do with pop culture or any television should be talking about this writer strike.
mhm,
Um, of course, the Writers Guild of America did vote. I think a full 97.8% of them voted
yeah.
to go on strike. Um, and this is not the first time that they've gone on strike. They went on
Mhm,
strike way back when, over in 2007. I had mentioned in our GUA chat that I lost one of my most beloved TV shows to
mhm,
that strike, and I will never blame the writers for that. I will blame Hollywood for not compensating those writers correctly. Which for this strike, I think it's very reasonable. I think that everybody should be allowed to make a living, and with so much on the line for Lucasfilm now, the movies that are in pre-production and all of this stuff, like it all is delayed. We were very quickly discussing everything with the writer's strike, and I believe it was Chris that mentioned that I believe the last writer's strike that lasted over 100 days could or did delay productions for up to 6 months. Uh, and it can get very wild very quickly.
mhm,
He also mentioned that it cost Hollywood, of course, California, uh, several billions of dollars for not having that kind of course, income and production hitting their state. So I think it's in the best interest of Hollywood to very much be okay with the demands of the WGA. Uh, but it does put into question, when do these shows come out now? You spoke again about Acolyte, about Mandalorian. Uh, we had heard
Andor.
from and Andor, uh, but we had heard from Favreau and Filoni that their ideas for 4 had already been put on paper, that they
Mhm,
know where they're going in season 4, but how far did they get, you know? And
yeah.
what are the rules as far as, like, are they a part of the
Continuing
W?
productions.
Exactly, exactly. So I'm very interested to follow along with the writer strike, and of course we will always follow along the stuff with Lucasfilm. But we will 100% talk about any kind of updates that come up.
Yeah. Because like this is affecting like production on one of the shows that I was looking forward to, which is Aragon. Disney had chosen to adapt Aragon as a TV series on Disney Plus, but because of the reorganization slash layoffs at Disney, and then B the Writers Guild strike have kind of put things on pause right now. So um, and that came from Christopher Poloni himself. So it's tough to say, and obviously, yes, everyone deserves to make a living, and they're well within their rights to strike. We'll see what happens. We will 100% see what happens. So,
All right. Now, is there anything else on the news docket, or are we finally going to talk about this finale?
yes, so we have one more thing. Um, so Lars Nicholson, obviously Thrawn himself. Uh, so I don't know who reached out. Collider reached out to him after the Ahsoka panel and asked about Dave Filoni's writing, as well as like what the plan is for Thrawn in general, um, and like how he imagines Thrawn as a character. So first up with the writing, talking about Dave Filoni again. His writing is very good. It's very strong. All characters have their own. You'll probably not totally know what's it's all about until the last scene. And I like that in writing, that you take the audience so seriously that we drag it right to the last moment to reveal what that whole thing was about. And I sent this to you because there's something in the Thrawn books that I think will become very important.
I so
Oh,
so is it what I have already read, or do I need to finish that last book? Or is it the
no,
new
like
trilogy?
it's the new trilogy.
Ah, okay.
New
So
trilogies because there's two of them. Um,
there's there's 6 books?
yeah,
Oh god.
and they are some of the heftiest books in Star Wars.
Oh no. Katie, what are you doing to me? What are you doing?
I
So
think you're gonna have to at least read the original trilogy. I don't, and then maybe listen to me and Nathan talk about ascendancies.
so so I have said I will go through this journey. I may not like it, and you never know. I may like the new way he writes Thrawn in canon. I don't like how he is being written in the Legends books. It is very much a thorn in my side to have him be this, as I joke, and now Chris has very much tagged along for the joke, God Thrawn, that he is in the Legends books is not very fun. But just the phrasing of what Mickelson says here, the uh stringing the audience along to the very end to find that revelation, it is very much what I feel like Thrawn does throughout the Heir to the Empire series.
Yeah,
It's very much like, oh, I know your last move before you even think of your first move. It's just like, that's
yeah.
so stupid. I'm sorry. It's just, oh, it angers me so much. And
Well, and Mickelson talked about the character and playing him and said that's what you want as an actor. You don't want to reveal everything. You want to keep your secrets, and when it's within the script, it's the best because it's effortless in that sense. You only play the moment then because the story you're writing is so good that it will tell it for you.
I think that it can play along well in some circumstances. I think a last minute reveal as a like, oh my gosh moment can definitely work. What my experience has been with Thrawn, and like I've said over and over again on this podcast, is the idea of Thrawn feeling like he's omnipotent is not a fun way to read Star Wars. Um, because there is no opportunity for the hero to win. Uh, and it very much feels like that throughout the entire book. And then, of course, the heroes get lucky because it's never the heroes bested Thrawn. It's always the heroes get lucky against Thrawn, and I don't like that. It makes him too powerful of a character.
You may have to finish the Legends trilogy just to kind of see how it ends and then go into the new trilogy because I think you need to see how the whole story comes together because Zahn wrote it knowing it was going to be a trilogy, whereas the new canon trilogy he didn't know it was going to be a trilogy.
Yeah.
So I think yeah, that would be my opinion is you need to finish the Legends trilogy and then we can talk about it and then go into the new trilogy and kind of see how it goes.
Well, I said I would do it, so I definitely am. I think I actually have one credit that is available on Audible, so I could grab that last book.
Are you? Path of Vengeance. Don't forget, it doesn't show for pre-order.
Oh, it doesn't. Damn
It
it.
doesn't.
Well, actually, oh well, no, because mine renews in the middle of the month. Path of Vengeance is at the beginning of the month. I'll have to use this credit for Path of Vengeance. So I'll wait until I'll wait until our schedule clears up a little bit more to grab that
Yes.
last book.
And May is going to be cleared up. Um, I don't think there's a book in June either. So I think the next one is the Inquisitor book by Delilah S. Dawson in July, which is in the middle of the month. So
Yeah.
um and then from there, yeah, it's the two short story ones. It's the High Republic one, and then From a Certain Point of View, Returns. I still think it should have been called Return of From a Certain Point of View, but that's just me. Um, um, so Zahn actually did get a reaction, thanks to Screen Rant. They got a reaction to Mickelson's casting, at the Paris Fan Fest. Um, and Zahn said, I visualize the characters in terms of attitude, not so much as voice or appearance. Lars Mikkelsen did a wonderful job with the voice. The actor is Danish. He doesn't really have an accent, but he has a particular vocal cadence when he plays Thrawn, which gives him a little alien side. He's the perfect cast. Yeah, I disagree, but it's okay to disagree. It's okay to disagree with the
Okay,
people you consider legends.
so of course, we've talked about Taylor's fan cast of Henry Cavill, but who did you want to be Thrawn? Like honestly,
I
who?
think I think I would have rather had like an unknown, like just somebody to kind of like pop in and like make his name in Star Wars, as this legendary villain. Um, Obviously we had seen like all of like the blue Benedict Cumberbatches. I don't think Henry Cavill, despite him having the look, I don't think he would have gotten the character down. Um,
I'm gonna go ahead and disagree with you because one of my biggest fan castings for Henry Cavill is Doctor Doom, who is a very like almost Thrawn-esque individual within the Marvel universe. Very cunning, very manipulative, very 4D chess type of character like Thrawn is. Um, and I think he just would have had that nuance about him. Now, my thing is, make the idea of a new individual making like their impact on Star Wars. I do agree that that's always the best way to go, but you do have like, and I don't think I would say Lars is iconic as Thrawn, but let's go the opposite route with live action to animation. The legend himself, Darth Vader, like that voice has not changed since Star Wars was created. Of course, that being uh
James Earl
uh
Jones.
Jones, yeah. So like I think that it's playing devil's advocate. I think it's okay for Lars to come in as Thrawn. It doesn't bother me that much because we have seen it done the other way around.
You know who? Thinking about it, if I had to pick a well-known actor, I think it would probably be like Michael B. Jordan. Honestly,
I would have never thought of Michael B. Jordan as Thrawn. Um, that's an interesting choice. Um, because see, I always think of Michael B. Jordan as like the heartthrob, and I never
Mhm.
look at Thrawn as like the heartthrob, you know?
I'm more like picturing like the Black Panther villain. I think he nailed that,
Oh, like Killmonger. Okay, okay,
and
okay. Yeah,
it
yeah, yeah.
comes pretty close. I think it comes pretty close to what like I would imagine Thrawn being? Like a little more panache involved, but like ready to go. Like I've got a plan in place.
Okay, when you put it that way, I can see his performance of Killmonger as Thrawn. I can definitely see that. Um, but yeah, just like again, and I very much see, of course, the internet goes wild with how thirsty they are sometimes. But just like people, just freaking thirsty for Thrawn would be weird. It would be weird. But then again, if it was Henry Cavill, they would be thirsty for Thrawn too. So I just like
Get on my side of Twitter. Everybody's thirsty for Thrawn.
Oh man.
Now that we know who Thrawn is, y'all tell us who you would have cast as Thrawn. If you were the casting director for Lucasfilm, all those things that are going around on Twitter. What would you do if you were in charge of Lucasfilm for a day? What would you do for this? And we'll talk about that, I'm sure, at some point. But
Oh, I should have saved those. I know I was going to because that tweet was going around very heavily. Um I think it was like right after last week's episode of Mandalorian. Um and I asked the rest of the GUA to answer that question for us. Uh of course, Chris was being very silly, saying, "Oh, just like basically watch the world burn, making some silly decisions." Um, of course, I think that the decision for either both Snell or I would be definitely jump on the animation again. With I think Snell definitely wants to jump more into the Return of the Jedi Force Awakens time gap, where
mhm.
I definitely want to jump in the High Republic time gap. Um,
Well, we all
but
know how much in love Snell is with Adam Driver as Ben Solo. So
exactly.
all right, so I think that brings us to our conclusion of the news. We're going to talk about Visions next week, obviously, y'all. So we're going to go in detail with what we know for Visions Volume 2. Um, and then talk about just a recap on Visions Volume 1 and again what some of our favorites were now that it's been a year or two. Because it feels like two. Now that it's been a while, like looking back at them now, has our opinions changed? So
Yeah, I'm gonna be very interested to go back because I have not gone back
yeah,
since we read Ronin. That was
yeah.
the last time that I watched at least the duel, but I would love to go back and watch all of those episodes again. So with that, let's jump right into the season finale of The
What
Mandalorian
you mean
season.
series?
I okay, so we're not gonna jump right into the ending. But Katie very much at 4 o'clock in the morning messaged me and was like, "Hey, you got your happy ending." And at what cost, Katie? At what cost did I get my happy ending?
There was no Thrawn in this episode. I just wanted to celebrate. I was like, no Thrawn, no Thrawn,
That
no
the
Thrawn.
the very cartoonish circling I the fade to Grogu, um and I saw how much time was left on the episode. I scrolled my mouse through that entire thing. I was like, there's got to be something. Please give me something. And there was nothing there. It was such a disappointment. But let's go
It
ahead
was a
and talk.
great way to end the episode. I
It
loved
was
it.
it was not. Um as you can hear in our discussion clearly, we have very opposite ways of looking at this episode. Now, I want to go ahead and say this. There was a lot of good moments in this episode. But watching the episode felt like I was watching an episode of 90s Power Rangers. It was that bad. Um, but
No.
let's talk a little bit about the more positive things of the story beats and everything else. One thing that I feel like every day, me, you, and Taylor were theorizing on how this season finale could go.
I
On, oh, go ahead, go ahead.
I don't typically get involved in like theories and everything, but I've been so adamant about how Thrawn did not need to be in this episode. And yes, you could have said, oh, well, Thrawn could have been in there and that would have been a better way to end it, blah, 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 blah. But that takes away from the journey of the Mandalorians recapturing Mandalore. Yes, it does. Because if Thrawn would have we talked about this. If Thrawn showed up in a post credit where he was just looming over like watching a hologram of Mandalore battle or something, that would have been fine by me. But like Thrawn taking out Gideon would have destroyed their whole storytelling aspect.
Here's spoiler for people who are still listening to us and haven't seen this finale. Bo-Katan didn't even kill Gideon, so it ruins it anyway. Like like
It was a Mandalorian that still took him out. Yes, I'm not as happy about it because it I'm not as happy about it because it wasn't Bo, and Bo didn't get her vengeance, but it was still a Mandalorian who took him out and they all together recaptured the homeland, the motherland.
it, okay, okay. Because here's the thing. Um, one complaint that I've been hearing this entire season, which I felt like was happening not as frequently as I was hearing the complaining, but it was very noticeable in some aspects of certain episodes within this season, was the choreography of the season was not top notch as it usually is. There was a lot of moments where actors were like standing still and like anticipating a hit to then move and do some other choreograph and like other things. There's a lot of stiffness to the movements of their fighting. Um, and that very much showed this season. And like it did bring out a little bit of the cheesiness and the cringiness of watching this episode. Um, I know that you had made comments on Twitter about how uh how atrocious some of the script was actually a little bit of a good thing with how this and atrocious is a word that I'm choosing to use, not
No,
your
so
exact
what I
words.
was trying to say, and I think it was misconstrued by a couple people, but what I was trying to say was I don't think the script issues were as noticeable in previous seasons because they were more adventure of the week and they could stick to a formula where it was literally the same exact thing week to week, but then you had like 1 to 2 moments of plot slash character development within it.
Yeah.
In this, where your whole season is going towards one thing and literally every single episode but one, if you want to count it, um, is focused towards plot development and character development, you it's more noticeable because it's not as formulaic. Like one of my biggest complaints about seasons 1 and seasons 2 of The Mandalorian was it was formulaic. This one I think breaks that formula, and I loved where it went with the story, but it is like obvious the script stuff in this season, like really obvious.
Yeah, the the villain of the week type of storytelling that season 1, season 2 uh I feel like helped on a basis of like, hey, we're not expecting this character to be that big type of storytelling. Like, hey, these are
Yeah.
just adventures within the Star Wars universe. And then of course the Mandalorian blew up the way that it did, and they're like, okay, we have to make this character mean something a little bit more, you know?
Mm.
Um and so I totally agree with you on that aspect. Um but we talking about the theories and everything, um I think there was a lot of people that stuck with that title, The Spies. And they're like, okay, this means something. This has to mean something for the next episode as well. There has to be a betrayal. There has to be something that causes some sort of strife for there to be or need the need of spies. Um, the spies were unfortunately obvious. I kept on saying that it definitely could not be the very clear spies within the episode. It had to be somebody that we didn't know. And no, it was just very simple. The spies were working for Moff Gideon. We saw those spies. It was very obvious because this episode did not touch on anything of the sort. Um, the one thing that I don't know how I was surprised and like I was surprised, but also not surprised. Uh, Moff Gideon was creating his own clone army. Um,
So that was something we didn't really get to talk about last week because last week's episode was so long. Make sure you go check out all 3 episodes. Um,
yes,
I kind of saw that coming because he talked about how he was making improvements to the Dark Trooper, and that the suit was one thing, but now there was him in it. And so I kind of saw that coming. And now there was one guy who was like, if these are clones of Moff Gideon, then I am going to eat a dozen raw eggs. And he had to eat, he literally filmed himself eating raw eggs this morning.
yeah. Sorry, dude. Would never do that. For me, it's like okay, because the big revelation was okay that he's cloning himself, right? And then he comes out to face Din Djarin, and he says the best part about these troopers was that there is going to be a new aspect of them being able to use the Force. Of course, that is the reason why they wanted Grogu in the first place. Like this screamed, and again, this is kind of why I really needed Thrawn in the episode. Because Moff Gideon was the spoiled rich brat that thought he could have everything, and I needed somebody to cut him down to size, and the Mandalorians didn't do it. Like they just didn't do it. Like they were still losing the time of like when they were fighting when Din and Bo were fighting Moff at the very end, they were losing. The only reason why they won was because of a giant ship decided to blow up Moff Gideon. Like that's
I don't know
literally it.
that. Grogu was getting more involved, and he used a lot of force powers deflecting all the fire.
Yes, but again, that was more so with the I forgot what they're called. The red
Praetorian
armored
guards.
yes, the guards. But in the fight with Moff Gideon, it was starting to get a little bit more intense. Like, oh, somebody's dying here. It very much felt like that. Um, and you had said in the Geek First Discord, the Mandalorian channel, that you had said, "Oh, well, if Bo Katan and Din could survive that, then possibly Moff Gideon could survive that." And then, boom, Grogu comes out of nowhere, clearly saves them, doesn't save Moff Gideon. Um, Moff Gideon had one of the most 90s deaths that I have ever seen in my entire life. Even before the explosion, his arms were spread out wide. He was yelling out in the sky and he was just screaming, and then the explosion happened, and then he died. It was literally like you watch any Arnold Schwarzenegger action movie, and that's how all of the villains die. Like that's what it felt like.
So I threw this into the chat, but like, what if? So okay, one of the stunt double slash portrayers for the Mandalorian, Brendan Wayne, had teased on Instagram last week that the season 3 finale might just hurt too much.
This does not make any goddamn sense anymore. And we discussed
So
it. We it was a very brief discussion. Even Travis got involved because he was talking to Taylor about it very early this morning when the episode dropped. But the revelation was that there was several endings, or rumored. I don't know if
Potentially.
this has been
There's been
this.
nothing confirmed.
Yeah, nothing confirmed yet, but there is potentially several different endings filmed for this season, or for this season finale. Katie, I understand that last season there was a whole bunch of leaks, right? There was a whole bunch of people leaking season 2, but to my knowledge, no one, and I mean no one, knew that Luke Skywalker was coming at the end of season 2. That was the secret
Correct.
that they kept.
Yes.
So why do they feel like they need, if this is true, to film several endings to this season?
So, and because one of my biggest critiques of this episode, besides the script, is the special effects. The special effects look atrocious. Um, the jetpack fight sequence, I wanted to love. I wanted to love it so much.
I will actually say there are some really cool shots
There's some really cool
in
shots.
like
Most of it is trash.
like specifically some shots with Bo-Katan with the dark saber, which is another gripe
Mhm.
that I have in this episode. Pissed me off, by the way.
We'll get to that. We'll get to that. Um, filming multiple endings though. I don't with how many people you have working on this, um, I don't necessarily disagree that they didn't need that aspect, especially considering like the Brendan Wayne said something about the season finale and everyone goes, "Oh, so things are going to get wild," kind of thing. Um, and then they didn't. So clearly it was done for a reason. Um, but you could have also gone, "Oh, okay, maybe they did it to kind of gauge crowd reaction during the season. Maybe they go, oh, well, things fell down. Maybe we don't need that season 4 after all. And this is how you end it, which is why it feels like a series finale. Um, yeah, I don't know. Because the other thing that you have to consider, right, is even though you see Gideon die, what if it was a clone of Gideon?
That survived.
No, what if the Gideon in the suit was a clone and the real Gideon survived?
Oh, that would piss me off even more. I think
I
that
mean,
would piss
you
me
have
off
to
even
consider
more.
it though. You
You
have to consider
do,
it though.
because somehow Moff Gideon has returned. Um, that's the meme that's gonna come out. Like I already know it. Like it's going to happen. Um, I think I would finally, if that happens, I think I would finally be on the dark side with Snow. Like that. Like there is no helping the writing of this series. Because you have to progress. Like there's a reason, although it went downhill after they tried it, but there's a reason why even the show like The Flash stopped using speedster characters for their villains. It's like you have to try something new. Like this is you're just going to tell the exact same story over and over and over and over again. I don't need the exact story told in Mandalorian over and over and over and over again.
I'm not disagreeing. I'm not disagreeing at all. I think we also have to take into consideration that Giancarlo Esposito said, "Oh yeah, I'm in the like this is the season that I'm in the most of." So clearly, I think he filmed more scenes, maybe stuff that will be
Oh, he
caught on.
did say that, didn't he?
Yeah, and I think he spent like the exact amount of time because I think he was in holograms for some episodes, but like his big episodes are penultimate episode and season finale. And that's exactly the formula they followed here.
Yeah.
So, where are those scenes? Is he coming to play with more of them? But I mean, it's the oldest canon book. You put a clone in place of you. maybe he was strength induced, and that's why they were having issues fighting him. Because you would not look at Moff Gideon and go, "Oh yeah, he's a hand-to-hand combat."
Like I chopped that up to the suit though, because the very if you listen to the sound cues, they very much made him sound robotic, almost
Yeah, that's what I was
android
telling Matt.
esque. Um, every single step sounded like a gear shifting and moving. Like it wasn't
Mhm.
just because you hear Din Djarin walking down a hallway, you hear the metal tapping and everything else. The way that Moff was moving was very heavy. Um, so I felt that that was more the suit than it was possibly a powered induced clone. So for me, I don't know how I would feel. Like, because I could honestly, now that we know there's a movie coming out, I could honestly see season 4 being something completely new. Boom, Moff Gideon for the movie as the surprise villain. And I think that would piss me off even more. Like, because again, I think the one thing that Hollywood loves to stick with, and sometimes it works great, and sometimes it's just egg on your face, is the surprise factor. And I think for us being in the circles that we're in, the timelines that we're in on Twitter, like we're very rarely surprised anymore. Like we have to really just have to stick to, okay, we know this is happening, we know this is happening, we'll see how the rest goes, and we'll just enjoy the ride, right? That's usually how we go about things. But with this now, like, because we're not dumb, we're not idiots. Like, again, like Katie, you're putting two and two together. Okay, there's clones now. Everything has to be a clone now. Like you have to just throw that in there, and you have to expect everything to be a clone. And again, I think that comes into the territory of our personalities of like needing to know everything, like needing to know the ending before the ending shows up, right?
Yep.
Um,
Yep, 100%.
and like we may be shooting ourselves in the foot for theorizing these things, and then it comes into fruition. We're like, oh, called it 100%. But I I think that you can't let go of a talent like Esposito. So I
Yep.
can't necessarily say that your theory is wrong because the big argument in the GUA, I wouldn't say argument, but Joe was like, "Oh, Din's dying. Din's 100% dying." And of course, Brandon Wayne bringing out the whole, "Oh, this season's going to hurt." A lot of people theorized it. A lot of people theorized, "Oh, Din Djarin is dying. Katie Sackhoff is going to be the Mandalorian that this show is going to follow now." Like it's there's a world of possibilities with this show. I think that sometimes our heads create better scenarios than these writers do sometimes.
I
But
mean, I think that was, like, the reaction to The Rise of Skywalker. Everybody thought The Rise of Skywalker was gonna go a certain way, and I think Rise of Skywalker, more and more people will grow to respect it and appreciate it as a story versus now, when everyone's like, "Oh, I had this ending in my head and it didn't happen." Like, I completely went in there going, "Oh, this is how it's gonna end," and then it didn't. I had to reframe my expectations, but at the end of the day, I love The Rise of Skywalker.
yeah,
So, it's something you just have to take into consideration with yourself, and I'm not saying that if you didn't like it right now, then you're completely wrong and you're gonna look at it differently 10 years later and go, "Oh, yeah, I actually really love this." Like, no, if you didn't like this season of The Mandalorian, if you didn't like this season finale of The Mandalorian, you don't have to like it, and I'm not trying to convince you otherwise, but it's just kind of where your expectations can lie. And we can headcanon the shit out of anything all day long, but at the end of the day, what's canon and what's in the story is what other people are writing, not us. And I
yeah.
think more fans need to accept that. So let's talk about the dark saber.
Okay. So the whole idea of the dark saber. Well, not even the idea of the dark saber. The I feel like MacGuffin that the dark saber is made to be for the race of Mandalorians was very important. And I think it was very important to fandom. And I think it's a very important part of lore because it's a very unique thing that makes Mandalorians the way that they are. In certain aspects, because we have clearly seen there is two different tribes, as they called them in this series. You know, the Mandalorians that don't care about the old ways, and the Mandalorians that do care about the old ways. That's basically the two factions, right? So, but they all agreed on one sentiment, and that was whoever holds the dark saber, rightfully, should I say, rules Mandalore. And for Bo-Katan to have this like badass moment of fighting in the sky with the dark saber, I will say all of the like really cool because they there was some shots that were moving very fast with the camera, but there was some that kind of lingered on Bo-Katan with the dark saber. Those shots I absolutely love. They were very very cool. I think that the I don't know if it was the shakiness of the cam that probably wasn't exactly right, or the lighting along with everything that was going on wasn't perfect, but it still looked great. For them to do all of this, to build so much on Bo-Katan finally having the dark saber, finally about to exact her revenge, and then for freaking Moff Gideon to just grab the dark saber, not even grab the dark saber, grab her hand and the dark saber and just crush it like it was nothing. That I'm sorry. No. Like I was pissed.
Uh, have you never heard of "If I can't have it, no one can"?
Oh, I definitely get it. Like cuz again, I said it before. Moff Gideon is the rich kid that wants everything and wants the attention all on
Oh.
him. And he even says, "Oh, give me the dark saber and I'll free your people and I'll rule your people and you'll be free but you'll just have to rule you'll have to live under rule of me." Like I understand the sentiment of if I can't have it nobody can. But the idea of him just being able to just be like, "Oh, I'm going to crush this thing and nobody's going to use it." Like again, I feel like some people will be like, "Oh, you could just build a new one." Like it's the significance of how old that dark saber was. You know?
Can I be honest though? How did it make it this long, anyways? I mean, we saw Anakin lose how many lightsabers? We
True.
saw Ahsoka lose her lightsabers. Like, how has it been alive this long? Now, I don't necessarily think, oh, you just build a new one. I think it's a perfect opportunity to build the connections that you and Taylor were talking about. Send Bo off to Ahsoka in Ahsoka and have Ahsoka help fix it. Like, I think that's an easy fix and maybe why it wasn't necessarily fully addressed at the end.
So right here, um, don't know how legit this is. Uh, this says the the power cell of a lightsaber is rechargeable.
Yes.
Diadium power cells must have tremendous cycle lives to outlast many of their wielders, which is at least 50 to 100 years. Which, in theory, the dark saber should have been long dead, right?
Well, yeah, because according to Wikipedia, it was created around 1050 BBY.
And this season of Mandalorian is roughly
10 ABY.
yeah. So it should be kaput.
Right. And like you said, you can totally replace the power cell in it, and I'm sure like they did that over the years. But I mean, we also saw a reforged Skywalker lightsaber in The Rise of Skywalker. And we've seen how they're going towards the sequel trilogy. So I think it would be easy to say that it's not gone forever.
No,
Um,
I think that I could again, it's kind of like the idea of Grogu leaving and then coming back. Like the idea of just like the next season, Bo-Katan just has a dark saber and she's like, "Oh, I decided to rebuild it." Like it's like, why did you destroy it then? Like that's the thing. It's those little
it's
tiny
but
nitpicks that I have. That's like
but it's setting up a new generation for Mandalore. It's setting up a new era. So I
I can
think
agree with
that's what
that.
it's indicative of. Um, so yeah, I think that's that. Um, all right, so do you want to talk about the living water scene now with Ragnar?
I'm trying to think if there's anything else before the living water. We talked about the clones. Um, we talked very momentarily about Grogu being very, very uh, uh,
Active?
active in the scenes. Um, him losing IG 12, 13,
IG-12, yeah.
yeah, the bodysuit, um, and uh, I I enjoyed it. I think that we'll actually get there because we're going to be talking about the living waters. So let's go ahead and talk about that. The living water scene. Um, I thought this. The of course the Vizsla kid is the one that
Yep.
gets the water poured on his helmet first. I I legit thought about the first episode of this season and how Din just like fell, or second episode, and just like fell like so many feet underwater. I felt like this kid was gonna walk too far and then boom, just like fall. Um, no, but he shares the creed. This is the way. Blah blah. Uh, how do you like? Do you think he becomes a prevalent character in the future? A secondary character in the future? Like, or do you think this is just like, hey, like you are now the holder of your name, you are Vizsla, like kind of thing. Now that your father is dead, like, how do you feel about his son now?
I don't think he'll necessarily become like a bigger character. He may like I think he'll do like maybe what Paz was doing originally where he was in like 1 to 2 episodes. Because as we're gonna talk about, Din Djarin and I go ahead and say it, Din Grogu go ahead and move back to Navarro and have their own little cottage on the outskirts of town for where they can reside after all their adventures in between adventures.
I I like this moment because it's a very touching moment. Of course, it calls back to the kind of PTSD and everything that uh Din had gone through, that we saw in the flashbacks of season 1. Um and he tells the armorer like, "Hey, Grogu is under my wing, like he's going to become a Mandalorian." She's like, "Well, he can't talk, he can't say the creed, he can't be a Mandalorian." He's like,
Mhm.
"Well, can't his family do it?" She's like, "Yeah, his family's probably living, several light years away from us. Don't know where they are." He's like, "Fine, I'm gonna adopt him." And that he does adopt his name onto Grogu, Din Grogu. Um,
This has been a very popular topic on the Twitter.
d- okay, so what is Twitter? What is
Mhm.
Twitter? How does Twitter feel, and what are they saying?
Everybody has been like, so they gave Grogu Din's first name, so now he is first name, first name. And I'm like, aren't there other cultures in the world who have their last name placed first? So they're known as ZY and the last name being Z. Like if you're gonna say your full name, you say your last name first.
Yes, I think that Well, see, how I don't even know the customs of Star Wars because, like, of course, Skywalker
I don't think
is
this has been established, and, like, it could all very well depend on the planet that,
or
Din Djarin
race.
is from.
Yeah,
Yeah, or the race. Um, because, I mean, I don't think Bo-Katan's I mean, she's been addressed as Bo-Katan, like, singularly name and not Bo-Katan Kryze. So I don't think her first name's Kryze, because also we had, Satine Kryze.
yeah,
Like, that was her name. So I think this is all dependent on the planet that Din Djarin originally came from. So in that case, like, I think it makes sense. And it just shows a little bit of depth within Star Wars that, okay, some people take names a little differently than
yeah.
other people. So I think Jaren's his first name, and that's what I'm gonna start calling him.
It's an interesting first name.
Mhm.
I don't know if I 100% agree with you because Din Djarin sounds like a proper name. But again, it's friggin' Star Wars. I can't. I don't know what in the world a proper name is in Star Wars. You know.
I'm
Um.
sure people said the same thing about Anakin when things first came, like the prequel trilogy first came to be. Oh, what is this? It's a stupid name.
But I I think it's we've we've all theorized like we've all headcanon, not even theorized. Like Din is Grogu's father. Like I
Yep.
think it was even I think it was even the armorer that who was the first person to call Din Grogu's father or Grogu his son.
I
Like
think it
I
was in
feel it.
season 1.
Yeah. I think that this has already been a thing. Like so like making it formal is just the formality of it, I guess. Um but I think it's very much appropriate. This immediately follows a scene where uh Din goes to again, I always forget his in character name.
Carson
The
Teva,
Tiva.
the New Republic base.
Yes. On is it Navarro? I
I don't
believe
think
it.
it's Navarro. I think it's a planet outside of Navarro.
Okay, well, this bar, where we see Filoni himself in the background. I don't know if you saw that. Uh,
I did not see it, but I figured he was back there.
yeah, so he is while they are talking, uh, you clearly see a cowboy hat,
Oh.
and because I saw the cowboy hat, I was like, "Who is that?" And then you clearly saw that it was him. I was like, "Oh, okay." Um, but Din goes on to have this conversation with Tiva about how, okay, well, now that I have a son and a protege, like I'm a bounty hunter at heart, but now I have somebody within my protection. I can't go as hardcore as I used to.
Mhm.
And he is basically going to have a contract deal with the New Republic. Um, you know, and I think that's how we're going to start season 4. Um,
Mhm. I
now,
think he's joining the original Marshals program that Carson originally broached
yeah,
with, um, Cara Dune. I
yeah,
think that makes the most sense as to if people wanted to equate the position with what he's doing. Now he's doing it on a case by case basis. So like he doesn't want to be full-time employed by the New Republic, but he's offering it up. And I think that's how you tie him in to Heir to the Empire, Dave Filoni's movie. Like that's
yes,
the tie-in there. It's
hmm
not, oh, Ahsoka's looking for help, and who is she gonna go to? The one and only Din Djarin and Grogu. Like it's going to be, oh, okay, can you go help her because you're the only person that I can trust with this or whatever.
yeah. Which I will say, Mandalorian Din Djarin is dying in that movie. Just throwing it out there. 100% believe it's going to happen. Um, and then we see at the very end, um, Daddy Din Djarin sitting in his chair with his feet propped up, his kid playing with frogs, and that's how the episode ends.
You
Uh,
forgot IG-11 gets to finally return.
oh my god.
Oh,
Get I mean, sure, like it's so important to the series, to the
yeah.
season. Like how could I ever forget? Um it's literally maybe a 1 minute scene. Um
Yeah.
he comes walking through waving to everybody. Um and that's it. And like I said, they go about their new home. They're hanging out. It fades to black and then credits. And my god, I was hoping for an end credit scene. Um
Yeah.
this like again, Katie messaged me and was like, "Oh, look Clay, you got your happy ending." This was not the happy ending I needed. Um I cuz again, you have you had said, "Oh, this feels like a series finale."
Mhm.
If it was a series finale, if we knew, "Hey, this is the end of their journey," cool. That's my happy ending. Knowing that it's a season finale, them still working on the possibility of a fourth season, because you never know. Like how wild would it be if like they don't deal with this whole writer strike thing and they're just like, that's the end of the Mandalorian, by the way. Um, but like for me, if that Thrawn scene had happened with this, I love the idea of thinking there's a happy ending, but there's still a looming threat. That makes me feel more intrigued for season 4 than this doesn't get me interested in a season 4.
But I mean, it's not supposed to. And I think that's why they ended it like this. They may have very well ended with a post-credit scene and gone, "Oh, okay, we're gonna do this." But again, it's making sure that you're not sorry, um, it's making sure that you're not overwhelming your audience with too much information. Like, I think if you had just had a Thrawn post-credit, then people would have been like, "Well, who's that?" Because I mean, they're not gonna call Thrawn like Thrawn's not gonna say his own name. And Gideon's probably gonna know who he is, so he's not gonna say his name. So it would have been like, okay, now you're overwhelming the audience. You're taking away from the ending of a show that is supposed to matter to these people and go, oh yeah, but there's still this out here, and now you have to go look up information on him. Like,
But
and
see,
that's been
that's
one of the biggest complaints for like some people with like the cameo factor was like, okay, well, am I supposed to know who this is? Like, and I'm not like it's fun to get those questions from people, but it's also you don't want to alienate your audience over it. And I know there's a couple people on Twitter who have been like, I don't really want to watch Star Wars. Like, I don't really want to watch everything in Star Wars to have to know who these people are. And that's fine. So if you want to stick with The Mandalorian or you want to go with Ahsoka, I think that's perfectly up to you. And I think this leaves it open for that concept because, uh, and this is the last thing I'm going to say, but you won't necessarily have to know what's going on for the Heir of the Empire movie to happen. And if people are like, ah, yeah, I don't really want to go see that movie, then this ends it just fine for them and they don't have to go see that movie. So I think this is a good way to put it.
I understand your way of thinking. I understand those individuals that you're talking about, their way of thinking. For me though, I feel like we have been trained, I don't know if it's the right word, but we have seen so many times in not just Star Wars, but in Marvel, in DC, and other things of pop culture that have the endings where people are like, who is that? And then the same day that movie, TV show, cartoon, whatever is released, you have 17 different articles that it has so and so post credit scene explained. And then you have a whole article that tells you exactly who it is. Like,
I'm not, yeah, I'm not saying you're wrong. And obviously, like, I'm going to know who it is. You're going to know who it is. But also, like, my sister's not going to look those up. My sister's going to come ask me and go, well, like, I don't understand why they included him here. Like, because I've literally gotten that from her before.
But I think that's also a good thing. I personally think that's a good thing. Uh, it's the idea of course, you and your sister are not going to have a water cooler to talk at. Most jobs don't have water coolers anymore to talk at, but it's the phrasing of the water cooler conversation. It's
Mhm.
all the people going into work the next day. Oh, I really love that Mandalorian finale, but like, who was that dude? And then you have that one nerd that's like, well, actually, pushing up the glasses. That was Grand Admiral Thrawn, first featured in this book at this time and this year, da 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 da. And like it, and of course, sometimes it can be eye rolling in those situations, but then you're more informed. You're like, oh, okay, cool. Like, so then people get more intrigued with that, or they don't. It's up to them. Um, I think always feeding your audience is a good way to go about things. Even I know you're gonna hate this because I'm pretty sure you saw the ending of the latest season of Young Justice. Um, that ended on it didn't end like a hey, this is the end of a series. No, it had a huge cliffhanger that I would love to see happen. Um, but it had individuals that had not been introduced into the show at all yet. And there was a lot of people that are like, wait, who was that? Or who was this? Or who was that? And then it gained more conversation online. Like I think even in those instances, it was a series finale at that point for Young Justice. There was a cliffhanger, and it still got people talking about those characters at the very end. Like you feed your audience, it feeds into the notion that your audience is probably going to help the company, aka Lucasfilm at this point, want possibly go and search either comics or novels or movies or etc. So but that's just my way of thinking.
Yeah, and I think that's just like because we're the people who want to know everything. And so I just don't want to see people getting frustrated. I want them to be able to jump in and kind of go, oh, okay, they're explaining who this guy is. I think the way they did Ahsoka appearing in The Mandalorian was a really good idea, where they had like Ahsoka centric Clone Wars episodes where you could go learn more about her. Um, so, and I mean, that might have been a good idea. I just think for a guy who hasn't made an appearance in the show, it didn't it didn't make a whole lot of sense to go, oh yeah, we're gonna use this really happy ending moment to go, oh yeah, here's who's who you're fighting. Like maybe if Ahsoka had been like, oh yeah, here's who I'm looking for, and here's a hollow of Thrawn as a character, then maybe you go, okay, I know like briefly what he looks like, but at this point, the average fan has no idea who Thrawn is. Like if they're a live action only person, who's Thrawn?
True, true. Um, there was a lot of discussion about this finale. I want to go ahead and talk about on the game here in the chat saying won't happen, but would love to see a season 4 all written and directed by Rick Famuyiwa, or at least for him to have his own movie. Katie, what do you think?
Yeah, season 4 is not gonna happen. I would definitely love to see him maybe have gotten like a spinoff directed, like a Book of Bo-Katan or something very similar to the Book of Boba Fett. Maybe he gets Book of Boba Fett season 2. Who knows?
I'll just say
Um,
if you liked Rick Famuyiwa, man, what could have been? He was at one point the director of The Flash. So
yep.
man, even
Um,
Daniel RPK, I sent this in the Geekverse chat, in the Mandalorian channel. Daniel RPK said, in a line of tweets, um, he was very vocal on how he did not like this season finale, but he says, in my opinion, season 2 of Mando had the perfect ending for Din and Grogu. They should have left it like that till Heir of the Empire. They should not have reunited them during a freaking spinoff. And this third season should have been a Bo-Katan spinoff with Din only as a cameo. How do you feel about that?
yeah, I I think, and that's just based on how they set themselves up with Book of Boba Fett. I think if Book of Boba Fett had been The Mandalorian season 3, then you could have gone with the, oh yeah, The Mandalorian doesn't revolve around one specific character element.
Yeah.
By using the Book of Boba Fett to go, oh yeah, we're kind of spinning off here. In this case, this really should have been the Book of Bo-Katan. Yes, Din is in every single episode. Yes, Din gets character development. And yes, some of the things that happen for Bo would not have happened without Din. And that's okay because it was really her moment to have the character growth. And so this really should have been a Book of Bo-Katan and not Mandalorian season 3.
I think I would have enjoyed this season a little bit more if it was just centered around Bo-Katan. Especially since, I mean, I think it became a little bit of a trope, but I think each time it happened, it was on a very emotional scene in some capacity. But the idea of the unmasking of Pedro Pascal's Din Djarin in every season. Like there was a reason you had to see his face, right? Um, Travis always talks about how you need to see the emotion in their eyes whenever you see a character do a very emotional scene. We saw it at the end of season 2. We saw it at the very end of season 1. In the middle of season 2, you know, the whole thing with the having to take off the helmet for security reasons and all of that. Um, with this, without seeing Pedro Pascal, I'm gonna be completely honest. Like Din Djarin's character was not my main focus in this season.
Oh, 100%. And I don't necessarily think it's strictly because of Pedro Pascal and like not making an appearance with his face. I still think there was a lot of heart in the vocal work he did, um, that kind of showcased that emotion. And obviously, the stunt performers, Brenton Wayne and Lateef Crowder, who got the credit on portraying him this season. And I think honestly, that's probably the biggest reason they got credit on portraying him is because Pedro never makes an appearance.
Yeah,
I 100% think he never went to set. He just did ADR after the fact. Um, so which is fine. Like if that's the way they wanted this season to work, then that's the way they wanted the season to work. They had to go around The Last of Us, and clearly The Last of Us was very well loved.
very
So,
much so.
was it worth it to you to get Last of Us in this season of Mandalorian? That's the
Uh,
big question I want to ask people.
um, I'm gonna say yes. If it means, oh, see, this is hard. Last of Us was such a good show. I highly recommend it. Anybody who can handle scary zombie like post-apocalyptic themed shows, I highly recommend it. Highly recommend the podcast that goes along with it as well. Um, but see, I was going to say if it means that I get a worst Last of Us, but a better Mandalorian, but with the same script of Mandalorian, like that doesn't do anything for me, you know? It doesn't
Yeah,
do anything for me. So I think it was worth it for him to not make an appearance because I got such a good show in The Last of Us. Now, I'll just say this. We again, the the writer's strike has everything up in the air. Like literally everything is up in the air. Anything could happen. But if it is resolved quickly and everything quote unquote goes according to plan, I think Pedro is still on for season 2 of Last of Us. So like where does that leave the Mandalorian?
that is the question. That is the question.
That is the question indeed.
All right. Well, I think that brings us to the conclusion of today's episode. Um, so yeah. Any other thoughts on what we have talked about today, Clay?
Nothing that I can think of off the top of my head. Just a reminder for everybody who is listening to this. I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Katie, it's not this Saturday, but next Saturday?
No, it's this Saturday.
This Saturday. Okay, so as the time you are listening to this, 2 days from now, we are having our GUA crossover episode, which is streamed live here on the Geek First YouTube channel. Come hang out with us in the chat or join our Patreon and come join in the call with us. We will, of course, will be talking about Mario, a movie that all of us have seen. I'm sure, of course, Mandalorian will be brought up. And a lot of pop culture stuff has been popping off, so I'm sure there will be plenty of topics to talk about. But of course, well, Katie, you sound like you're about to say something.
Yes. So I just asked our GUA chat this, and just to get Snell's response mainly. That's what I was looking for. And the question, just for a reminder, was Mandalorian season 3 worth The Last of Us? Mainly for those who didn't like season 3. And Snell said, if that was the reason, absolutely. I like I like Mando 1, loved 2, but nowhere near the quality of The Last of Us. But again, they can still write other stories better, so I don't think I could put the blame on that. And Chris said, I think it was worth it if it was the reason, especially Pedro would have agreed since it allows him to show more as an actor than Mando would. I didn't dislike this season. It's not my favorite, but I did not hate it. So there's a couple responses. I'm sure I'm gonna ask it again on Saturday just to get more responses. So um yeah. So Clay, tell us where they can find you.
Of course, you can always find me on Twitter and on Mastodon at Fanboy Clay. Go check out my other show, Ranger Alliance. At the time of you listening to this, the Sunday after our GUA crossover, myself, Jake, and Joe will be recording a special episode on the 30th anniversary special of Power Rangers, that will come out next Monday. Um, we've all seen it. We've all have our opinions. It's going to be a very interesting thing to talk about. But go make sure to listen to that when it finally drops on the GUA. I think now is a great time, more than anything, to go ahead and say this. I'm going to go ahead and let everybody know as of now, starting in after May 4th, I am taking a month long break for some mental health. And also, I have a lot of appointments via doctor. I'm doing a lot of vision stuff, a lot of actual like checking out my ears and stuff. So I wanted to have a clear month in case anything happens as far as like needing rest or anything. And of course, spending some time with family. Amberlyn is finally starting to, I think, realize she is her own human being, and she is so fun to play with right now. So I will be back first thing in June, but I will still be here for, of course, Visions uh, episode or season 2, and of course the Path of Vengeance, which we have confirmed that we are getting soon. So that'll be very exciting to talk about. But yeah, just wanted to let everybody know that I am going to be taking a month-long break. We'll be back in June. I think this show will probably move to every other week. We haven't necessarily talked about it yet.
I'm
But
actually thinking about taking a break myself. So and
oh,
just kind of taking a month
th-
off. Slice of
yeah,
Film will still be around, but
yeah,
we
and
don't really
honestly,
have anything to talk about in May.
there isn't a whole lot to go around with Star Wars stuff, so I think that would be probably the best thing to do. Help us both rejuvenate for a very strong end of the year with books and comics and everything else. So be very
Yes.
very fun indeed. But Katie, what about you? Where can they find you?
y'all, you can find me on social media. It's at Slice of Katie. This show you can find on most social media platforms. It's at Star Wars Alliance about the 8 in the Wars. Very important. Don't forget it. Don't forget you can text or leave us a voicemail 830-538-4828 or email us at the same username, Star Wars Alliance without the 8 in the Wars at gmail.com. Speaking of which, we have a giveaway to do. Before I forget, that is very important. You did
Yes,
not get any text or phone calls, right?
I did not.
All right. So we're going to flipacoin.com because we had 2 people email us. And I guess technically we can't flip a coin because one of them actually did a review and that's why he was emailing us. So let me go to randomnumbergenerator.com. All right, random.org. That is what? What the heck?
Do you want me to do it? I can share the screen as well.
Nope, here we go. Okay, I got it. Share screen. Random number generator. Share. All right. The upper limit is 3. Generate. 3. Woohoo! So David, congratulations. You were the selection
Wait,
for the giveaway.
David, is this David the same as our Patreon David?
No, this was the guy that's the he's emailing us. David Levitt.
David. All right. Well, David, you of course have won our extra copy of the. Oh, did I move
Chronicles
my
of the Jedi.
copy? Chronicles of the Jedi. I did move it. I moved it on to the shelf with all of my High Republic stuff. Uh, I have not taken a gander at it yet. I am in full Path of Vengeance mode. I am ready to read that book. But I will be taking a gander at that. I didn't realize that it was like an actual like chapter by chapter book. Uh,
Yeah, it's an in-universe chapter book telling the history of the High Republic. Um, so yeah.
I'm sure we will also do a review of that uh, fairly soon. But next episode, you should expect us to, of course, like we said, do a retrospective on Visions Volume 1. But we are also going to attach our review of Quest for Planet X, also, which is, of course, a High Republic novel within the Phase 2 of Star Wars: The High
Yeah.
Republic. I think I've listened to it like I think 4 times now. I'll probably get a 5th one in, or at least half of a 5th one in by the time we record next week.
Yeah. I think I will as well. I'll probably get a 3rd one in because I've been listening to the Aragon books. So that has kind of been my priority. But yeah, definitely very excited to talk about that book because it was definitely probably my favorite of the 2 middle grade out of this, just as a sneak preview. And don't forget, we've already
Oh,
reviewed Cataclysm, so you can
hold
check.
on, hold on.
Oh, did you miss one?
So I did miss one. This is not into well, this is just well, I guess we you know what? I will personally West Star at West Star TN let me get in touch with you. I will go ahead because I did not catch this one. I will go ahead and we'll get in contact with you about getting something, whether that be credits on Audible or a Chronicles of the High Republic. Definitely. But he did send us a text. I don't know why it didn't give me a notification, but he does say, "Hello, this is West Star TN on Twitter. Do we think that Snoke is a crispy Moff Gideon clone or just proof of concept?"
Oh, I think Gideon was the proof of concept.
I think because there was I think it was you that on Twitter we were talking about the idea of clones and everything else. Let's see, Star Wars Alliance, because you said there was something uh oh shoot, where's oh yes, because we were talking about Heir to the Empire.
Yep.
And the fact that uh who did I say? Oh, no,
Jalen?
no. The no, we yeah, we were saying that the force users in Ahsoka were quite possibly the crazy Jedi in Heir to the Empire. Um, but you had shared a tweet saying that the closer resemblance to that character was quite possibly Snoke in the sequel trilogy. So I'm gonna say that Gideon is proof of concept, and I think because we are basically like it is a title of the same novel, Heir to the Empire. I think we will get the idea of where Snoke came from in Heir to the Empire.
I think so too. And just also, like, Gideon's black, Snoke is white. So let's not like draw those conclusions and
That
parallels for people.
that would be kind of wild. I'm sorry that I would question Star Wars and Lucasfilm very, very much.
So, okay. Well, I think that officially draws us to a conclusion. Always remember, y'all will be here for Wednesday nights visions next week, and then we are actually taking Wednesday off the following week, and we're going to be doing a live show talking about Young Jedi Adventures as well as Visions Volume 2 on May 4th. So, with that, I want to wish everyone a great day or night, whatever time of day you are listening or watching, and we will see y'all next time. May the force be with you.